What if tomorrow everything you do was no longer needed? What if suddenly the skills you spent years building were no longer enough? Pause for a moment and be honest with yourself. Who would you be if the world no longer needed what you do? This is not a comfortable question, but it is a real one. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is opening an email that begins with cold, impersonal words. Unfortunately, your position has been terminated. No emotional warning. No consideration for the effort, no recognition for the sleepless nights, no recognition for the years of dedication, just the end. And what is most disturbing is not that this is happening. It is that it is happening faster and faster, silently, constantly, relentlessly. Every day, systems are learning, machines are evolving, algorithms are becoming faster, more efficient, more capable. Tasks that once required human intelligence now require only processing. What once took years to master can now be replicated in seconds, and this is creating something dangerous, something invisible, a silent fear that few people admit, but millions feel. The fear of becoming irrelevant, the fear of being replaced, the fear of realizing that what you believed was your security was only a temporary illusion. Because your entire life, you were taught to believe in a story. The story that if you studied hard enough, if you worked hard enough, if you sacrificed enough, you would be safe. But reality never promised safety. Reality promised change. And now that change is happening right in front of you. And maybe you have already felt it, not as a dramatic event, but as a sensation, a silent doubt, a quiet unease you cannot fully explain. Maybe you have noticed the world accelerating, and somehow no one is truly prepared. Maybe you feel something shifting, but you cannot clearly see what it is, and deep down, there is a question few people have the courage to face. What happens to me if the world no longer needs me? This is the question that keeps millions awake at night, not because they are weak, but because for the first time they are confronting something they always avoided seeing, that perhaps their identity was built on something that was never truly stable. Because here is the truth almost no one wants to accept. The problem is not artificial intelligence. The problem is not technology. The problem is where you built your identity. If you built who you are on something external, something that can be replaced, something that can disappear, then without realizing it, you built your security on something fragile, and everything fragile eventually breaks. But there is something most people still do not realize. There is a way to become impossible to replace, a way to become unshakable, regardless of what happens in the external world, a way to build a kind of strength that no machine, no crisis, no change can take from you. And almost no one is doing it, not because it is impossible, but because it requires something most people have never developed. And to understand this, you must first understand where true strength has always existed. Most people believe they fear artificial intelligence, but that is not true. That is just the name they give to something much deeper, much more personal, much more uncomfortable to admit. Because the real fear is not technology. The real fear is losing value. It is waking up one day and realizing that what made you feel important no longer matters. Your entire life, you were conditioned to believe that your value is in what you do, not in who you are, but in what you produce, what you deliver, the role you occupy. From an early age, the question was never, who are you? The question was always, what do you want to become? Become a doctor, become an engineer, become a business owner, become someone. Do you see the difference? Your identity was slowly fused with your function. Your value was tied to your role. Your sense of importance was tied to your status. Your sense of security was tied to your income. And this happens so gradually that you never notice the exact moment when you stop seeing yourself as a human being and start seeing yourself as a function. You no longer say, I exist. You say, I am this. I am my job. I am my position. I am my usefulness. And the moment this happens, you become vulnerable. Because if who you are is based on what you do, then when what you do disappears, who you are begins to collapse. This is why people fall into crisis when they lose their job. It is not only the financial loss, it is the loss of identity, it is the loss of importance, it is the loss of the invisible structure that supported how they saw themselves. They did not just lose an income, they lost the person they believed themselves to be. They lost the character they played for years, and this creates a void, an uncomfortable silence, a question that echoes internally. If I am no longer this, then what am I? This is the root of fear. It is not about machines. It is about meaning. It is not about technology. It is about identity. Because when your identity depends on something external, you become a prisoner of it. The one who builds their identity on the external lives hostage to the external, hostage to the economy, hostage to the opinions of others, hostage to stability, hostage to circumstances that were never under your control. And here is a truth that may be difficult to accept. You never had control over those things. You never had control over the direction of the world. You never had control over the evolution of technology. You never had control over what would be valued or discarded. The world has always been moving, always changing, always evolving, and it will continue evolving, with or without your permission, with or without your preparation. But there is something that completely changes how you live once you realize this. There is an invisible line that divides reality into two parts. On one side are the things you do not control, the speed of progress, corporate decisions, market shifts, people's opinions, the behavior of the world. And on the other side, there is something much smaller, but infinitely more powerful. Your mind, your choices, your response, the way you interpret what happens, the way you react, the way you position yourself in the face of chaos or change. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control the wrong side of that line, trying to control the uncontrollable, trying to prevent inevitable change, trying to find security in things that were never permanent. And as a result, they live in constant anxiety, because deep down, they know it can all disappear. They know it is temporary. They know it was never truly in their hands. But what they do not realize is that their true strength was never outside, never in stability, never in position, never in recognition. It was always in the only thing that never depended on the world, your ability to choose who you are, regardless of circumstances, your ability to remain stable, even when the world is unstable, your ability to remain whole, even when everything around you changes, because in the end, you never had control over the world, but you always had control over yourself, and this is exactly where most people fail. They spend years trying to build external control, and almost no time building internal control. They strengthen their skills, but neglect their mind. They strengthen their position, but neglect their identity. And when the world changes, they are not prepared, not because they are incapable, but because they built their foundation in the wrong place. But those who understand this, those who learn to build their foundation internally, become different. They do not panic when the world changes. They do not collapse when they lose something external, because their stability no longer depends on it. They carry their stability within themselves. And this is what makes someone truly strong. Not the ability to control the world, but the ability to remain unshakable, regardless of what the world does. If you want to develop a mind that does not depend on circumstances, keep watching until the end. Because what you are about to understand is not just a philosophical idea. It is a complete shift in how you see security, value, and the future itself. And once you see it, you will never think the same way again. There is a silent mistake weakening millions of people without them realizing it. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a lack of skill. It is not a lack of potential. It is something far more subtle, far more dangerous. It is the dependence on stability. The modern generation has been conditioned to believe that stability is normal, that predictability is guaranteed, that security is permanent. From an early age, you were taught to follow a specific path: study, get a good job, build a stable career, and then everything will be fine. This promise was repeated so many times that it stopped being questioned. It became an assumed truth, a silent expectation. But this expectation created something few people noticed: fragility. Because when you believe the world should be stable, any instability feels like a threat. When you believe comfort is the natural state of life, any discomfort feels like an error. When you believe things should remain as they are, any change feels like injustice. And this is exactly why so many people collapse emotionally when they face reality. Not because reality changed, but because their expectations were wrong. The world is not becoming more cruel. It has always been unstable. You were simply too comfortable. Too comfortable to notice, too comfortable to prepare, too comfortable to develop the only thing that truly matters: resilience. The modern generation was trained to seek comfort, not strength, to avoid pain, not face it, to seek external security, not internal stability. But comfort has an invisible side effect. It weakens you. It creates dependency. It creates a false sense of control. And most dangerously, it makes you forget who you are without it. A person who depends on comfort is not free. They are conditioned. Conditioned to function only under ideal circumstances. Conditioned to remain strong only when everything is easy. But life never promised ideal conditions. Life has always been unpredictable, always uncertain, always unstable. The only difference is that now you are beginning to see it, and this realization terrifies those who never prepared, but it does not terrify those who always understood the nature of reality. The Stoics never expected stability. They never assumed the world owed them comfort. They never believed external security was reliable. They knew everything could change at any moment, without warning, without explanation. And that is exactly why they were strong, because they did not base their peace on something that could disappear. While the average person said, "I hope nothing goes wrong," the Stoic said, "If it does, I will be ready." While the average person sought constant comfort, the Stoic practiced voluntary discomfort. While the average person avoided pain, the Stoic faced it. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood something most people never learn. Strength is not born in comfort. It is born in exposure to discomfort. It is born in adaptation. It is born in accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. The average person builds peace on favorable circumstances. The Stoic builds peace on their own mind. The average person needs the world to remain stable in order to feel okay. The Stoic remains stable, regardless of what the world does. This is the fundamental difference. One depends on the external, the other depends on the internal. One lives in constant vulnerability, the other lives in constant preparation. Because the Stoic never lies to themselves about the nature of life. They do not assume permanence. They do not assume stability. They do not assume security. They understand that everything is temporary, that everything is transient, that everything can disappear. And instead of fearing this truth, they accept it. They embody it. They grow stronger because of it. Because when you accept that everything is temporary, you stop depending on what is temporary. You stop building your identity on what is unstable. You stop seeking security where it never existed, and you begin building something far more powerful. Something that does not depend on circumstances. Something that does not depend on stability. Something that does not depend on comfort. You begin building internal strength, and that strength changes everything. A fragile person needs the world to be gentle with them. A strong person does not. A fragile person needs circumstances to cooperate. A strong person adapts to circumstances. A fragile person breaks when reality changes. A strong person evolves when reality changes. And this is the silent choice in front of you right now. Continue depending on a stable world, or become the type of person who remains stable in an unstable world. Because in the end, the world does not need to become easier. You need to become stronger. Now we arrive at the point where almost everyone fails, because understanding the problem is uncomfortable. But acting on it requires something even rarer: responsibility. The truth is, you cannot stop the world from changing. You cannot stop progress. You cannot stop systems from becoming faster, more efficient, more capable, but there is something you can do, something that places you in a completely different position from most people. You can become impossible to replace, not because of what you do, but because of who you become, because skills can be copied, character cannot. A skill is simply a learned behavior. Character is an internal structure built through discipline, pain, awareness, and choice. A skill can be replicated by an algorithm, but character is forged in silence. It is developed in moments when no one is watching, in moments of difficulty, in moments of uncertainty, in moments when you could quit, but choose to remain. This is what makes someone truly irreplaceable, and there are 5 pillars that build this kind of strength. 5 decisions that, when applied consistently, transform you into someone who does not depend on the world to remain strong. Build character, not a career. Your position is not you, your title is not you, your function is not you. These are only temporary circumstances. They come, they go, they change, but who you are remains. The mistake most people make is spending more time strengthening their position than strengthening their mind. They spend years developing external skills, but completely neglect their internal structure. And when the external disappears, they collapse. Because there is nothing holding them up from within, but when you build character, you carry your strength with you. Regardless of where you are, regardless of what happens. Character means discipline when no one is watching. It means acting with clarity when everyone else is confused. It means remaining steady when everyone else panics. And a person with character does not need perfect circumstances to remain strong. They are strong in any circumstance. 2. Develop emotional anti-fragility. Most people are emotionally fragile. They feel good when everything is going well, and they feel bad when something goes wrong. Their internal state depends entirely on their external state. They are reactive, they are vulnerable, they are dependent. But there is a higher state, a state where you do not merely resist pressure, you become stronger because of it. This is anti-fragility. It is when difficulty does not destroy you, it builds you. It is when uncertainty does not paralyze you. It trains you. It is when chaos does not weaken you. It reveals you. An anti-fragile person does not avoid discomfort. They use it. They understand that every difficult moment is an opportunity to become more internally stable. While others collapse, they remain calm. While others panic, they observe. While others lose control, they grow stronger. Because their stability does not depend on the world, it depends on themselves. 3. Practice voluntary discomfort. This goes against everything modern society teaches, because today everything is designed to eliminate discomfort, convenience, speed, ease. But discomfort is the environment where strength is built. When you voluntarily expose yourself to discomfort, you train your nervous system not to panic. You teach your mind that it is capable of enduring more than it imagined. You reduce your fear of the unknown. You reduce your dependence on comfort. This can be simple. Remaining in silence when you want distraction. Doing what needs to be done when you do not feel like it. Accepting difficult moments without immediately escaping them. Every small act of voluntary discomfort builds a layer of internal strength. And over time, you become someone who does not need ideal circumstances to function. You function in any environment. 4. Train constant adaptation. The world belongs to the adaptable. not the most intelligent, not the most talented, but the most adaptable, because adaptability is the ability to remain functional, regardless of change. Most people resist change. They want the world to remain familiar, predictable, safe. But this is an illusion. The only constant is change. And those who accept this become free. They do not panic when something changes. They adjust, they evolve, they reposition themselves. They understand that their strength is not in remaining the same, but in their ability to grow beyond who they were. An adaptable person never becomes obsolete because they never stop evolving. 5. Detach from external validation. This is one of the most important points because most people live dependent on the invisible approval of others. They want recognition, they want validation, they want confirmation that they matter. But this dependence creates weakness because when your self-worth depends on something external, you lose your autonomy, you lose your freedom, you become controllable. But when you build internal validation, you become independent. You do not need the world to recognize your value. You know who you are, and that certainty creates a stability nothing external can shake. Because in the end, being impossible to replace does not mean no one can do what you do. It means no one can be who you are. Your combination of discipline, your combination of awareness, your combination of presence, your combination of internal strength. This cannot be replicated. This cannot be automated. This cannot be replaced. And now I want to ask you an honest question. Are you truly afraid of artificial intelligence, or are you afraid of losing the identity you built around what you do? Comment below, because the answer to that question reveals far more than you realize. And sometimes, the first step toward becoming strong is being honest with yourself. There is something you need to understand now. Something that once understood completely changes how you see the future. Real security was never external. It was never money. It was never status. It was never stability. Real security has always been mental, because everything outside of you can change. Everything outside of you can disappear. Everything outside of you is subject to time, chaos, and transformation. But there is a place where true stability can be built within you, in your mind, in your perception, in your ability to remain firm when everything around you is moving. Most people spend their entire lives trying to build a stable world, but the few who become truly free build a stable mind. And that changes everything. Because when your mind is stable, you do not fear change. You do not fear loss. You do not fear the future. You become independent of circumstances. You become adaptable. And adaptability is the new stability. Think about that. In a world that constantly changes, the only thing that truly matters is your ability to change with it without losing yourself. A fragile person needs the world to remain predictable. A strong person remains predictable to themselves. Even when the world is unpredictable, they do not panic, they do not lose control, they do not despair, because they understand something most people never learn. True power was never in controlling the world. It was always in controlling yourself. Those who master their mind can survive any era. It does not matter if the world becomes more technological. It does not matter if the world becomes more competitive. It does not matter if the world becomes more uncertain. The person who masters themselves will always have an advantage no one can take away, because while others panic, they observe. While others react impulsively, they respond with clarity. While others become slaves to fear, they remain free. Free not because the world is safe, but because their mind does not depend on external safety. And this is where most people fail. They try to control the future, but the future was never under their control. What has always been under your control is who you choose to become within it. And those who choose to develop calm, develop power, because the future belongs to the calm, not the fastest, not the loudest, not the most desperate, but the calmest, because calm creates clarity. And clarity creates decision, and decision creates direction, and direction creates destiny. A calm mind sees what others cannot see. A calm mind recognizes opportunity where others see threat. A calm mind remains functional while others collapse. And in a world where most people are controlled by fear, the one who controls their own mind becomes rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. More valuable than any technical skill, more valuable than any specialized knowledge, more valuable than any position, because positions change, knowledge becomes obsolete, skills can be replaced, but a strong mind remains, a disciplined mind remains, a stable mind remains, and that is the true advantage the Stoics developed. They did not try to predict the future, they prepared themselves internally for any future. They did not seek to eliminate uncertainty, they became strong enough to live with it. They did not depend on external stability, they became stability itself. And when you reach that point, something changes deeply within you. Fear begins to fade, anxiety begins to lose its grip, the need for control begins to disappear, because you realize you do not need to control the world to remain whole. You only need to control yourself, and that is freedom. If this kind of reflection strengthens your mind, if this kind of truth resonates with something deep within you, then you are in the right place. Because here, we do not seek comfort, we seek clarity. We do not seek temporary motivation, we seek permanent transformation. Here, we do not only train skills, we train the mind, because in the end, that is what makes someone truly unshakable. The world will change, it always has. Empires that once seemed eternal are now dust. Technologies that once seemed revolutionary are now obsolete. Careers people built their identities on have disappeared without warning. And now, once again, humanity stands at the edge of another transformation. Artificial intelligence will evolve, industries will disappear, entire ways of living will be rewritten, but there is something the future cannot erase, something it cannot automate, something it cannot replace. The disciplined mind. Pause. Because in every era, the individuals who endured were never the strongest physically. They were the strongest mentally. When chaos rose, they remained steady. When others panicked, they observed. When others reacted emotionally, they responded intentionally. This is why the Stoics trained their minds relentlessly. Epictetus was once a slave. He owned nothing. He controlled nothing outside himself. And yet, he became one of the most unshakable minds in history. Because he understood one truth: your power does not come from controlling the world. Your power comes from controlling yourself. Pause. The future does not belong to the most intelligent. It does not belong to the fastest. It does not belong to the most talented. The future belongs to those who remain calm while others lose themselves, to those who remain focused while others become distracted, to those who remain disciplined while others become weak. Because when everything external becomes unstable, the internal becomes everything. Marcus Aurelius ruled during war, plague, and collapse. He did not control those events, but he controlled his mind within them, and that made him untouchable. Not by circumstance, but by fear. Pause. This is the real question you must ask yourself. Not whether AI will replace people, not whether the world will become more competitive, not whether the future will become uncertain. The real question is this: are you building something within yourself that cannot be taken from you? Because skills can become outdated, money can be lost, status can disappear, but mental discipline, clarity, emotional control, these become stronger with time. These become your foundation. These become your advantage in any era. Pause. The person who depends on stability will always fear change, but the person who builds internal strength becomes stronger because of change. This is the Stoic way: not resisting the future, not fearing the future, preparing for it silently, calmly, deliberately, because in the end, The strong do not fear the future. They become ready for it. Fade to black, because in the end, the strong do not fear the future. They become ready for it. Pause. And if you are one of the few who chooses discipline over distraction, clarity over noise, and strength over comfort, then stay here. Because this is not just a channel. This is a place where minds are trained, where calm is built, and where ordinary people become unshakable. So subscribe and begin strengthening the one thing the future cannot take from you, your mind.